You get
Okay, so thank you so much, Rex, for inviting me to come and talk with you about these things that are going on in the United States and in the world. And I think this came out initially out of the comments that I made anyway about a discussion between Vladimir Zelensky and your president, President Trump, and Vice President, Mr. Vance. Uh, so I thought that that was a wonderful example for us to learn from because most people who are watching it could see, wow, this is like watching a divorce in progress or something. It's kind of um, and and it's not often that we get to see this kind of discussion and be able to understand what's going on and learn from it in a positive way. And I think that is important. So how is it in the heartland right now?
Well, I am in the Midwest right now, as opposed to being on the coast, which I go back and forth, but I am in the middle of the United States right now, and being in the hot zone, of the USA with what's going on and how it's affecting us who are within it, those on both sides of our borders and the rest of the world, is I guess it's a fascinating place to be in that I never thought that in my lifetime I would see what's going on. I mean, we kind of, and that therein is the danger. We get comfortable, and when we're comfortable, we don't necessarily pay attention to what's happening, nor do we venture out anywhere. And so, we think, oh, well, everything is, status quo. It's all okay, and and our government itself is designed to change very slowly. I mean, that was the purpose of the founding fathers, so that you couldn't have an overthrow, that there would always be these checks and balances, and they would safeguard, each other against this potential. And now we're seeing it not just for the first time, but for the second time with one particular president, and it's not the first time in history where something like this has gone on, because it goes on all around the world at different times, in different eons and things like that. But so we're facing something that we've not really faced before.
Yeah.
Certainly Germany has, and other parts of the country, the world have. So it's a wake up call. I mean, it's a real
Yeah.
like, hey, wake up and notice what's going on,
Yeah.
or you might find yourself in the same kind of position as those who were in Germany or other occupied countries were, and the effect or the ripple effect that's going on throughout the world. It's important. And I'll pass it back with this comment, and that is, there are so many people who, like myself, didn't expect it, and at the same time kind of want it. We want somebody to shake things up. We want people to speak their mind sometimes, because we're tired of decorum, or we're tired of, false sincerity, that kind of thing. Um, but at the same time, we're now in a place where what appears to be going on oftentimes is not what's going on. It's like clickbait. It's the hot buttons. It's to get our attention and to get us to focus somewhere, so we miss what's going on over here, or we're so consumed with fighting this issue that we miss all these other issues that are far more important, far more relevant to more people all around the globe, and not just a little splinter issue that, while may be important and it may impact people's lives, and whether it impacts one life or a million lives, the import on those lives are the same for each one.
Yeah.
That said, though, we tend to think, well, if one person is affected by it, that's not nearly as significant if 10 or 100 or a million are. So we need to learn how to focus our attention on the things that are truly, truly, truly important, where our lives, our freedoms, our rights, our privileges all around the world are being threatened or being removed, while at the same time taking care of some of these other issues that aren't large issues for large people, but are still important issues that should be addressed. And that is a balancing act that somehow we've not figured out yet, at the individual level or even at the government level. So it's we're in an interesting time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a good way of thinking about it. It is an interesting time. And I still just so you know, I still feel quite hopeful about this time in history. Um, I think we have resources in the world today that we didn't have back in the 1930s when those things you're mentioning sort of happened last time in a big way. And so I'm coming from for those people who are watching who don't know where it is. I'm coming from New Zealand. It's in the South Pacific, and we have a long history of being. We would think of ourselves as a friendly country with the United States, and it's probably in the light of what's happened important for me to say thank you. We're we're very grateful for our long friendship because actually, of course, during the Second World War, I grew up well after the Second World War, but it was very much in the consciousness of people that our army had been away in Europe, and your army essentially saved the Pacific from domination by a foreign power, and so so that's the kind of background. And since then, we've had twos and fros, but we've always been, I think, a friendly country in terms of the United States. And we've always sort of seen the United States as being one of those countries that can protect, in fact, it errs from this sometimes, but can protect democracy around the world. And it's kind of scary to watch it. Some forces in the United States pushing the other way with this. I think that's what's happened. Yeah.
Well, I want to first agree with you. Some people hate alarm clocks, but they use them to wake up. They may throw them against the wall, but they still use them. I mean, in other words, we are at a point at which we have gotten comfortable in many ways. We need to be woken up and we need to be able to get off the couch and go take the correct actions to make the things work the way we'd hoped they would work. So I'm hopeful too. And I think with the right mindset, the right attitude, the right cooperation and collaboration, we can get through this. That said, if it all falls apart, it wouldn't be the first time in history,
No.
and it may be exactly what we deserve. But another way to, I mean, my point is this is a wake-up call for all of us all around the globe to say, what will we tolerate and what will we not tolerate? What do we want to promote? What do we want to demote from
Yeah.
attention? And so we're at that crossroads, and some things are very important. Now, I'm not a fan of government, just so people know. I'm not a patriot. By that, I don't mean I don't respect the country that I come from, but it's a crapshoot. I happen to be born here. I could have been born in your country or Africa or anywhere else, but I'm born in the United States. So I appreciate what I've gotten from the United States and what I've contributed to the United States. But just because I'm a United States citizen doesn't mean I'm better or anything than anyone else. I'm just somebody living on a landmass that people put imaginary borders and made rules and regulations of which some I agree and think are wonderful, and some I think are BS and should be changed. But that's the part of what you hope a democratic republic is all about, is the freedom to notice what needs to be corrected and then to work together to correct it instead of just trashing everything. And I used to be an anarchist. I mean, I was like, well, if it all falls apart, that's great. We'll just rebuild. But seeing that kind of anarchy in action, which is going on here in the United States, it's not pleasant. I mean, I'm okay with pain and growing pain, so that's not the point. It's the fact that you can do things in a way that it makes things better for everyone and still make the changes, or you can make things worse for almost everyone by doing things without a whole lot of forethought.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing here is just this like wholesale dismantle of stuff. We can get more into that, and I don't want to be talking too long here, without letting you speak. But I mean, we're in a very interesting place, and that place could be a very good place if we understand that. And
Yeah.
if we don't understand it and we operate out of fear or hate or hurt or any of those things, then the opportunities that we might be able to take advantage of and the possibilities and the resources we might be able to utilize to make the world and our country better,
Yeah.
we could miss those because we're just not paying attention right.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, and I know that my let me explain my background as well. We both share a background in personal change and NLP and so on. And my background as well includes training in. I'm not a psychiatrist, but I'm a psychotherapist, member of the Association of Psychotherapists here. And so I have that kind of interest in what's going on. I have another background as well. I have a degree in ancient history and archaeology. So that's, I'm really interested in the long-term history of this. And as you're saying, I see connections between what's happening now and what happened in Germany in the 1930s, what happened in the Roman Republic, which in many ways the American Republic was modeled on, with its Senate and so on, and as you say, checks and balances. And so I'm kind of interested in the interplay between those two things, the social world and the individual world. And I think you and I are in a position where we can help people learn a lot from this. I believe that as humanity we are going to learn a lot from this, and we're now in the situation where we can watch these discussions between individual human beings and work out, well, in what way does this reflect the way our consciousness is right now? In what way does this reflect the way that we don't listen to each other, or we don't explain ourselves clearly and respectfully to each other? So I really believe that modern technology gives us a more ability to do that than we've ever had before. So
So we're able to have this conversation, which would have been difficult 20 years ago, I mean, so yeah, no, it's great.
yeah, exactly. And Carl Jung famously said about the 1930s thing in Germany that Hitler wasn't one person; he was the expression of the unconscious of the millions of Germans. And so I think in that way there is a kind of a connection here. And when I look at what happened in the conversation that started us off thinking about talking, the conversation with Zelensky and Trump and Vance, then I can see that that's an expression of the consciousness that's going on in the world at present as well. So so I thought it was. I wanted to comment online about that because I thought, well, wow, I'm supposed to know a bit about listening to other people and conflict resolution and so on, and here is our collective expression of where we are in the world with this. Yeah.
Yeah, well said, because we do share this background in communication, negotiation, and psychology and stuff. I'd have been an anthropologist instead of a communication, or in psychology, sociology, my other areas of interest in school, if I could have figured out how to make money as an
Yes.
anthropologist. This made it look like that was a great career path. But I love it because it's especially cultural anthropology, or the comparison of different cultures around the world,
Yep.
and noticing that everybody has what's right for them, and somebody else thinks it's not right for them. And this has gone on as long as humans have been on the planet. But that said, there are certain things that we grow up with. We're a product of our conditioning, of our educational system, of our media, of the people who influence us, peers and family, and educators, and our bosses and all that kind of stuff. And there's traditions that are set up in culture that you're expected to follow. Like, in theory, I can't just walk across the light without risking getting a ticket here, in the streets, because they have this. I might think it's a silly law and it's stupid and it should be changed, and maybe somebody will change it someday or not, but there's procedures and things to put in place for that. That I may or may not even like that. But I do understand, as a transformational agent as you are, that I like to stir the pot. And I do that a lot, but I do it with the purpose of helping people be alert and awake, not to throw them into overwhelm, chaos, and confusion and be a total disruptor and then leave them. When I was a young actor, 1979, I went to a friend of mine who was an acting coach. He'd been teaching acting for a while, and we'd been friends for years, but I'd never gone to his class. I said, I want to join your class. He said, great, I'll put you in the advanced class. I said, no, no, no. Put me in the beginner's class and tear me a new one. Be as tough on me as anything, because I really want. Well, and he did. And I really resented it for the rest of the duration. Now, we're still friends 50 years later, he's in his 90s and he goes, I'm nicer today, aren't I? And I said, yeah, thankfully you are, but at the time, he was, it was quite a painful process to go through. I asked for it, and we paid for it, and some didn't ask for it and got it anyway. My point is, it's not everybody can handle having the rug pulled out from under them.
Yeah,
While I think, and I'm sure you think, we're all resourceful and we can recover from that, the point is it's not fair to do it.
yeah,
You know, unless I have a contract with that person
yeah,
as a change agent, say, do you care if you want me to find your blind spots or point out where you need to shift? I'm happy to do it, but I don't want to do it if you don't want me to. I'm not here to just lay my ideas on the world, right?
yeah,
What happened between Zelensky and in that Oval Office is that there's a decorum, there's an expectations that are set up from everybody. And what you saw was somebody getting beat up, essentially in public in the Oval Office by people and by strangers going, "What about the suit? And what about um, kind of like as a photo op to go, aren't we tough? See how strong we are."
yeah,
But what it showed me was that the strong men are straw men. They aren't strong at all because if they were, they wouldn't have to do that. They'd figure out a way to collaborate and cooperate to uplift and edify everyone and make sure that everybody has a win-win-win instead of going, we're not going to do anything unless you do this and have a quid pro quo.
yeah,
Which, by the way, is the very thing that got that president impeached the first time was he said, well, if you give us dirt on so-and-so, we'll give you
yeah,
aid. And now it's like, well, if you give us this, we'll give you, and it all looks like it's a negotiation, but it's really, bullying tactics. And it's, I wouldn't want that done to me, and I don't know anybody who does. And I would, and then the people who like the president go, oh, look, he's this tough guy, and look at this, and they're really taking this guy to task. But the scary part about that is as much as they have this cultish love for this guy, what they're failing to see is all of the Putin talking points that are coming out of that Oval Office and being promoted, and you're talking to the leader of another country and telling him he's got to do things so that the other guy he's fighting has an advantage. And it's like, how do you how would you expect anyone to respond? And I thought Zelensky handled himself admirably given the circumstances.
yeah. Yeah, that's true. I thought he handled himself admirably. As you say, it was a kind of an ambush with several people talking at him at once. And at some points during the discussion, of course, he was told, "You've already said too much. You don't get a right to speak because you've already said too much." And I actually did a word count and saw that it was 4-1 against Zelensky in terms of word count, and so so that's part of something that I think was happening there as well, which is a kind of a denial of the realities. Talking about things and that's become a pattern. I think it's fair to say in the president's way of doing business is to state things that are clearly not true and ask them to be the base on which we discuss things. And so I hope that that's something that we're learning about is the importance of that there is actually a difference between saying things that are verifiably true and saying things that are you just wish were true. And I think that's part of the psychology that that Donald Trump explains himself. I'm not insulting him by saying that. He says, I don't like to talk about bad things. I like to think I don't like to talk about bad things, Donald Trump says. So and that's a bit of a caution to us because I understand that, like I understand the importance of thinking about the positive. And what happens with Donald Trump, though, is he takes it a little step further, which is if I don't like to talk about bad things, then I'll just pretend good things are happening, or I'll pretend what's happening is what suits me.
Well, I don't have a problem with someone ignoring what's going on in favor of a different version of it inside their head.
Yeah.
In other words, I could look at my life circumstances and I could start enumerating all the things that are wrong and bad and that need to be changed or whatever, and let it make me depressed or
Yeah.
sad or frustrated or angry. Or I could look at all that stuff and go, I'm in a process
Yeah.
and I don't have all the answers yet. Life is pretty good. I'm above the ground.
Yeah.
Health is pretty good. I've got people around me I love. So, in context, I'm actually doing okay.
Yeah.
And so I don't have to talk about the bad things in order to, but he does talk about the bad things. When somebody asks him a question he doesn't like, he goes, "You're nasty, you're bad, you're not good. I'm not going to answer that question." He gets angry.
Yeah.
When somebody did something, he said, "Well, knock the crap out of him. Go ahead, I'll pay the hospital bills." I mean, he talks about bad stuff all the time. He calls people names, he bullies them. The very fact that he lies every time he opens his mouth and essentially says nothing. In other words, if somebody says, "What are we going to do about this?" Well, we'll look into it, and we have a plan, and we do all this stuff. When I mean, he's, in my opinion, he's not qualified to run a business, and apparently,
Yeah.
given all of his business failures and his history, which is not unknown to the population, but
Yeah.
people still believe the press, his own PR, not the reality of who that man is and what he's
Yeah.
accomplished or not accomplished and all of the problems he's had. He's been sued something like, I don't know if it's 3,500 times or 35,000 times. I mean, the guy is not meant, he's not presidential material for many, many, many reasons. One is as far as I can tell, he's not had a successful business. He's now partnered up with Musk, who's losing X, he's losing SpaceX, he's losing Tesla, he's destroying his own stuff. So you got two people who are consistently destroying their stuff. They're
Yeah.
willing to take the markets here because they'll make money if the markets go down, or if the markets go up, or if the markets remain the same. People who know how to make money know how to do that. So he's willing to destroy things to get his way. I don't know that he's willing to destroy things to get the way for other people. So it's the question becomes is it all self, like narcissistic self-interest?
Yeah.
You know, is it he's a benevolent dictator who's doing all this good for everybody? And the evidence on that latter part just is not there. It just does not show up. And the fact that they can't be transparent, they can't speak to legitimate facts and figures and evidence to prove where things have worked and where they haven't. They always have to lie, like the crowd size thing. If you just go, yeah, we had small crowds, who cares? You know, I mean, we had 12 people show up. We thought we'd have 1,200, but 12 people showed up, but those 12 were just as important as anybody. But the fact that that can't be spoken to are the things that are concerning. I mean, and I hate to say this about anyone, but there's a deep personality flaws that this person operates from that
Yeah.
are being inflicted on the world because
Yeah.
you've got like a mad king. You've got this mad man and so I don't want to disparage for the sake of disparaging. I could do that,
Yeah. Yeah.
but the bottom line is if you wanted to overhaul anything, if I want to go to my car and make my car work better, I don't start by blasting it apart or setting it on fire or cutting the tires off of it. I go through what needs to be done, and then how do we do that in the most cost-effective way. And so for anyone to come in and go, "I'm going to change government," you go, okay, well, get forensic accountants, get the appropriate investigators, uh, look at where you can trim the fat and increase the lean, and and do things in a conscientious, transparent, honest, legitimate way, not just slash burn chaos and confusion and overwhelm everyone,
Yeah.
because all that designed to do is get us to tune off, and let them railroad us however they want to do it. That's dangerous.
Sure. And can I check because I'm not in the United States? I wonder, Rex, is there an increasing, and this may have responsibility on both sides, but is there an increasing feeling of suspicion of expertise itself? Because as you're saying, this is a
That's what.
person, the expertise. This is a person who doesn't have the expertise that, I can think of recent presidents who had considerable training in law and constitutional law and so on. And by comparison, here is a guy who has kind of winged it in the business world, but doesn't have this background training. And I almost get a sense that Americans were saying, well, we don't want someone with expertise because someone with expertise is locked into the old system.
Well, I think I think both of those things are true. It's like holding two ideas at the same time that are not mutually exclusive, but not necessarily supportive of each other. The I don't know. I mean, when Ross Perot ran back in the whenever that was with Clinton or Bush or whoever back then, you know, he was a businessman. I mean, he was a better businessman than Donald Trump could ever aspire to be. I mean, Trump just doesn't have the track record. But Trump also has a track record of horrible abuses and racist statements and petty fights and grievances with everybody. So he doesn't have the temperament to be a president. And as a businessman, he's not really a successful businessman.
Hmm.
And the people that did The Apprentice said, "We are so sorry for putting on this sham, that he was a successful businessman." They were like, he couldn't even get through the show without us. Um, but he got elected president, whether both times are legitimate elections or not. I mean, you know, this last election, I mean, there's enough to question, but nobody seems to be investigating it. They're giving him the win, and it may be true. Um, but the all right, I'm not an expert in this, but I would argue this: government is not meant to run like a business.
Yeah,
Not a business. Business is about maximizing your profits, your cash flow, and if you're publicly traded, then providing for your shareholders, what's due them in a fiduciary, your fiduciary responsibilities. Government is runs on not profits and losses, but it can run on a loss because of the way they've structured things. But it's designed specifically in theory to protect the people and to serve the people and to ensure, at least in our country, and it seems like they're doing better jobs in your country and other countries, to pursue life, liberty, and happiness and the health and welfare of all people, whether that's healthcare, education, you know, the right to do anything, intermarriage, racial marriage, or gay and lesbian, I mean, it's designed to take care of its people, to serve and protect the people. It's like but I mean, think of it this way: a lot of people don't like the cops or the police because on the side of the cars in Los Angeles it's to protect and serve. And there are bully bad cops who make it bad for everybody. And I mean, even people I know go, "I hate police." I go, "Yeah, except when you need one.
yeah,
Then they can be your best friend. But when you need one, you hope that a good cop shows up."
yeah,
Not a bad cop, not one with an agenda, not one on the tick, not one that's corrupt, not one that's a racist, not one that's a bully. And that's what we have in the office. We don't have a person in the office right now and in occupying those positions because he's filled it with people who are incompetent. He's
yeah,
filled it with people
yeah,
who are shady. He's filled it with people who have the same kind of sexual problem history that he has.
yes,
So, and I mean, to me, it's egregious what's going on. I always say evil is as evil does, and the same applies to stupid. And what we've done is we've got a person in power who doesn't have the temperament, doesn't have the skills, doesn't have the brain power. And I'm not trying to insult him. I'm trying to be really realistic. He doesn't have what it takes to be the president. And apparently, this is proven every single day, both before, during, and after, and now in the second rerun of what has happened. He's just not qualified. He can't read, he can't speak, he can't deliver a speech.
right,
Um, but what he can do, which is to divide, to create chaos, to make all sorts of assertions that are unverifiable and not provable, and to repeat that message again and again and again and again hypnotically until it takes hold
yeah, yeah,
in the minds of the people. He is good at that.
yeah. Yeah, that's interesting, and you raised two things there that I've noticed as well. One is the metaphor of business being applied in a context where it's not entirely appropriate, and the other thing is this almost hypnotic quality of repeating a lie so many times that it becomes, well, it must be true.
And this, I mean, as well as anyone, that if you have, 90% of your talk is word salad, and the rest is the 10% is repeated phrases like bumper
Yep.
sticker slogans. The only thing you're going to be able to edit to or notice or remember are those bumper sticker slogans.
Yep.
So if all you do is talk and confuse people and then say this is the way it is, and then you're talking this is the way it is, the only thing that stands out is this is the way it is, because
Yep.
everything else doesn't make any sense, and that he is very, very good at, whether deliberate and conscious or just
This is a big mystery for us outside in the outside part of the world to give you a sense of what that's been like in New Zealand. It's the question is to what extent is he a conscious agent doing these things, and to what extent is he just doing whatever comes into his head, um, thinking that he is really good at whatever he does. And there's another thing that I'll give you as information about what it's like out here. I was at a demonstration a few days ago in support of Ukraine, and to give you a sense though of what kind of demonstration, the deputy prime minister spoke at this demonstration. So it was not sort of a radical smash buildings or something demonstration. It was a community support kind of thing, and the deputy prime minister said, I can't understand what's happening in the last few days. This was immediately after this conversation in the Oval Office. He said, this is just craziness. And so that's the first thing. But the second thing that happened was we have two deputy prime ministers at present because we have a coalition government of three parties, and each of them's got a guy at the top. And so the other deputy prime minister announced a few days after that, he said, we are going to go through our legislation and review all of the diversity and all of the DEI elements because that's the trend in the world. And that was a scary thing to hear after one person saying one day, this is craziness, and then a few days later the guy saying, well, we'll align with it because we've got to go with the flow. So,
wow.
yeah,
Well, I mean, the bottom line is that's happening in the United States where, companies and newspapers and media, are going, well, we can fight it and have this long protracted fight and not get anything, or we can just give in and go with it. And that's, that's scary. I mean,
yeah,
that to acquiesce to something like that is wrong. Hopefully you would think if you saw some people, beating somebody up in the street that you would go help them. I mean, they could be beating up a criminal or they could be beating up somebody who requires help. Either way, they're still beating somebody up. And if you don't know what the thing is, you can interfere helpfully or unhelpfully,
yeah,
but but the point is that there's no rhyme or reason. It's like we're gonna throw you into such chaos
yeah,
and and so the people are in chaos and they don't know they're off balance, and when they're off balance then the first person with a solution for balance is going to be the one that they follow. It's kind of like if you're in a smoky building and they go there's the door out, you pay attention to that person. So all of this is designed to make him look like a savior, and the people like a savior, they disparage Zelensky kind of like on the world stage. And then you got a president going, you're messing with World War III. And I'm like, no president in their right mind would ever say that to anybody because you're not helping allay fears. You're promoting fear by saying, well, we're this far away from this.
yeah,
And that's not what he should be. I mean, in
yeah,
my estimation, he shouldn't be doing that. He should be trying to calm things down and go, how do we broker an actual deal where,
yeah,
but it suspiciously, it looks like he's favoring one side, and that side is not the Ukrainian side,
yeah,
and that's very scary. And it used to be that our Republican Party was very anti, communist, anti Russia, anti this, anti, but they were hawk-like. They were willing to go to war, and now they're going. There should be no war, but Putin is the good guy, and Zelensky's the bad guy, and Zelensky started the war. I mean, when you know that that's not true.
yeah.
Um, but it's being promoted. I'm like, to what end? And the end is obviously some form of manipulation.
Yeah,
to get people to think that the agenda that they are pushing is somehow legitimate when it most likely very much is not.
yeah. Well, let's another. That's another interesting point that you bring up there about fear, because I know that that in the 1930s, that was really consistently what built the rise of fascism, was playing on people's fears, and I see a lot of that happening in, as you say, in Donald Trump's speeches, and in this kind of movement around the world, is people being afraid of difference. You know, they're afraid of different cultures. They're afraid of women as opposed to, you know, like guys you can trust, but women, who knows what they're going to do. It's this kind of fear of differences. Yeah,
It's actively been promoted since, you know, I mean, I would say that the last true Republican was probably Eisenhower, you know, and he tried to warn us against the rise of a military industrial complex and about the founding fathers in our country warned us against the rise of the oligarchy and corporations and and there's been this erosion since the Constitution was written or since this country was formed, where more and more is passed up to the rich. Reagan was huge in passing money to the rich. Um, and but again, people cherry pick where they get their news. It doesn't matter today. I mean, what's happened is, I mean, you should have a right to you have a right to suspect the agenda of the press because the press should be serving the people,
sure.
in a nonpartisan way. And in some cases they do, in some cases they don't. But we don't have that kind of press like we used to. We've given rise to, like Fox News and things like that, which Fox News goes, we're not news, we're
That's
entertainment.
right. We're entertainment. Yeah,
I mean, and they do that so that they can't be sued. And then they paid out one of the largest lawsuits ever because they're misinforming people and misleading people, and so you've got a lot of things that are going on. Trump obviously couldn't have happened, probably. Well, I mean, we had McCarthy in the 50s, so maybe it could have. The point is that the climate is also right. The people are mad. The people are angry. You have this have not have, society. It's not just black and white anymore, or men and women. It's very, very rich, very not so rich. They're getting rid of the middle class in this country, so people are upset and they want things. And then you've got this fake strongman come out, go, I will solve the problems because I'm a successful business person, and look at how I'm so powerful and everything else, and I will get things done. But then you look at his record and he goes, he really hasn't done that. What he's done is he's like overturned the apple cart or a number of apple carts, but you haven't seen the benefits from his actions. And he did it one time and didn't solve anything. And now we've got him again, and he's going, whoa, they wanted me. I have this mandate.
yeah,
It's like if it's kind of like the guy that walks out of you fire him because he's totally incompetent, and then you hire him back.
yeah,
You can't really expect much change if he was really horrible the first time. He's likely going to be horrible the second time. And that's kind of where we're at. We've got, but having learned from the first time, he learned to get rid of anyone who would oppose him and put
yeah,
only loyalists in. And that's where it gets really scary because the people who are there are a lot of times you see clips of them going, "Oh, guy's a cancer. He's terrible. He's awful. He's a criminal. He's this. He's that." And they completely disavow him. And now they're going, "Oh yeah, no, he's my president. He's good. He's great." And you go, "Well, at least you're not consistent."
well, we're watching from outside here, and a little nervous, I would say, is the way the world feels right now. What
At
what's
least so.
what's your guess inside America though? Like um, as you say, it's almost like a cult. The people who support Donald Trump at this point, and um,
So let me add this because I think it's important. I have some friends who are die in the wool Trump supporters.
right,
Some of them are very, very smart, and they're really, really smart, but not really very wise, but they are really, really smart. And they've signed on to the Trump wagon, right?
yeah,
Um, I have other people, and some are like on the Trump wagon, and they're horrible, horrible people, and I happen to know them. But I don't want anything to do with them. But then there are those few that I know that are lovely, lovely, lovely people,
yeah,
and yet they like Trump. And it's that dichotomy that is hard to understand because
yeah, yeah,
they would not treat anyone the way he treats people, and yet
yeah,
when he does it, they give him a pass. It's almost as if they don't notice it because whether it's certain, hot button issues that they think he's going to solve, or they just think, hey,
yeah,
God put it there. I mean, it. So there are good people who like this man,
yeah.
and then there are a lot of people who aren't. So I don't want to paint everybody with a brush.
No, no,
And there are things about him that might even be redeeming, but the issue with that is that there's so much that is not redeeming that it's hard to see the redeeming qualities that he might actually have. And so
yeah,
I don't want to completely demonize anyone, but
yeah,
I want everybody to be able to take a realistic look and not just having drunk Kool-Aid, put on the Nikes and lie down in a bed, waiting to catch the mothership. I would want people to go, let's do a real assessment
yeah,
of, is it good? Is this not so good for the people,
yeah,
for these people, those people, that people, for all of us, for this country, for other countries? Is this the kind of quality, the kind of quantity, the kind of person or persons we want in office? And if not, how do we improve on it?
yeah,
Because I'm not so concerned with what happens this 4 years. I'm concerned with all this that's been opened
exactly.
up
Yeah,
that's going to last
yeah,
10, 15, 20, 30
yeah.
years.
Well,
Our children are half going to deal with.
that's right. We're watching from here and thinking, well, this was the sequence with Vladimir Putin as well, that he then just passed a law allowing him another term and then another term, and then it was kind of over. And by that time, he had in place ways of eradicating, as we know, the people who might protest about that. Um, so,
Well, and on top to your point, it's not just that, but there were it used to be, and I used to hate it. People say, "Well, would the honorable senator from South Carolina please be willing to elaborate?" And they hate each other, and it's clear that they hate each other, but they're using Robert's rules of decorum and this, that, and the other
yeah,
in order to talk politely to each other while they kind of behind the stage slap each other up. I think what's needed is authenticity.
yeah,
But what happened when Trump got into power, he goes, I'm not going to answer that question. You're a stupid reporter. And now you see all these senators and
yeah,
Congress people doing the same thing. It's like they got a
yeah,
license
yes,
to be rude and a license to not answer. My argument is this. In our country, these people are not leaders and they call themselves leaders, and that's BS completely. They are elected representatives. We have a representative form of government. It's a democratic republic, and people want to forget the democratic part of it, but it's a representative form of government, which means they represent the people. And in our country, it's for the people, by the people, is what the government is about, or by the people for. And they forget that as if they are dictators, all of them, senators, congress, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. It's like whatever their agenda is, not what is in the best interest of the people or what the people would do, because we can only vote so often. So we vote these people in, and then some swap parties right away. They change parties when you go, well, I voted for you to be this, but now you changed that. Or I voted you in, and they were in America, they say all politicians lie. You probably say this all around the world. And I go, since when does that become acceptable? Why would you ever
yeah,
tolerate lying?
yeah,
If somebody makes campaign promises and it's all lies, why don't we hold them accountable? Why don't we go, you campaigned on this. You got 90 days to fulfill your campaign promises. If you don't do it in 90 days, we're getting ready and having another election. But we don't have that. And so we're stuck with things that are horrible. And we've got somebody who's horrible in terms of how he treats others. And then other people think they can do it. So this last thing, I don't know if you saw it, but that we had a State of the Union sort of thing. And
yes,
prior to this State of the Union, when Biden did his State of the Union, you had Marjorie Taylor Greene, you had Lowen Borbert, and people yelling and screaming and giving the finger or doing whatever, to Biden while he was catcalling him while he was talking and disrupting it. So this time you had a guy get up and go, I protest, this is wrong. And they eject him. They get the sergeants of arms to kick him out. And then they have a moment where they have a young child who's President Trump is going to make him a honorary CIA agent or whatever because he's a cancer, kid with cancer, so he's going to help him with the dream. Well, that's nice. Okay, it's also a photo op. It's also a setup. So the Democrats didn't stand up when the Republicans did, and now everybody's going, "Oh, how the Democrats were horrible because they didn't stand up for this kid." And because Senator or Congressman Green or whatever stood up and said, I protest this," and got evicted, they're like, "Oh, they're just horrible." Well, I get it. The Democrats would say the same thing about the Republicans, but my point is, it goes on both sides. But the people who, and it shouldn't, you know what I mean? I
Yeah,
mean, in
yeah,
other words,
yeah,
it's like, if you're not going to respect the person, respect the office. If you're not respect the office, respect the person.
yeah,
If you have something that you can demonstrate is true, say it. If you can't, stop banging on the table and distracting us, because it's 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 not healthy for us or the world to watch what's going on. It's kind of like in England or wherever they are, where they get into fist fights in Parliament or whatever it is, or in India, and
yeah,
people start beating each other up. You go, well, how is that a role model for your children?
yeah, yeah,
And these people who are in power, I can't believe I just did air quotes, but these people who are in power and abuse their office and abuse their roles are not, many of them are just not good role models for their kids. And when I said I'm worried about this 4 years, but the next 4 years is the kind of people we're attracting into politics who come in and think, well, I can just act like Donald Trump and I can win, is not the kind of politician I want.
yeah, yeah. It's not the role model you'd want, and that brings up if this is I know it's a more sensitive issue in America than in New Zealand, and that is, I wonder, looking from outside, whether there is a coming to terms with the reality of, like, what is Christianity. So I know that that's a hot topic in America. I know that there are more people in America who identify as Christian, but I was really interested in the discussion about J.D. Vance comments about, well, he basically sort of said charity begins at home. And someone pointed out, well, actually, that's the whole deal that the Good Samaritan story was about. Like, Jesus was exactly asked that. Where does charity, like, who is my neighbor that I'm supposed to love as much as I love myself? And the answer was, well, let me tell you a story about that. Very nice metaphorical story with a very clear meaning. And I wonder if I was impressed to see that raised, because it means that there's a chance that people get to re-examine, like, what is actually this religion of Christianity, and what do we really want in the world? It's a values thing.
Oh, we've made Christianity like an official religion, and
Yeah.
thereby taken all of the good parts out of it, in order to formalize it. It's like when you go, who's the Good Samaritan? It's the person you're looking at that you hate,
Yeah.
who lives next door.
Yeah.
It's the person of color that you don't like. That's the
Yeah.
person you're
That
supposed to
was the
treat
story.
well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Know? It's the people who give you the most grief. Those are the Samaritans you're supposed to administer to. They always want in this country to put the Ten Commandments in the schools. They want to put it in the courthouses. They don't put the Beatitudes. They don't go,
Yep.
blessed are the meek, the close, that kind of stuff. They put all the, like, you should not do this, that, and the other thing, but not, here's what you must do.
Yeah.
And if you take the Christian commandment, Jesus said himself, first commandment is the greatest commandment, is to love God with your whole heart and
Yep.
soul, and then love your neighbor as you love yourself. Well, that's
Yep.
three different people, if you think of it as people that you're supposed to love. You're supposed to love God, you're supposed to love yourself, and you're supposed to love the other person like you
Exactly.
love yourself. And
Exactly.
and you're supposed to love yourself as God loves you. So where is that being practiced in our country? Except maybe in among individuals in small pockets and communities who are really trying to minister to the needs of people.
Yep.
I don't see it in my government. I don't see it coming out of Donald Trump. I don't see that there's love and there's charity and there's kindness and there's good and compassion and understanding and peace and tolerance and acceptance and inclusion. I see these people on the other side of the borders are criminals, they're despicable, they're rapists, they're crimes, and everything else. And then he goes and he gets two people out of jail who are convicted of sex
Yes.
crimes,
Yes.
brings them back into the country.
And they do the same thing. Yeah. It's craziness. Yeah.
And so that's the thing. It's the dichotomy between
Yeah. stated
You know,
beliefs
and
and
he
feel,
would say, "Don't believe your eyes. This is a white phone. This is white. This is white. Don't believe your eyes. It's a white phone. It's a white phone. You can't trust your eyes. The press will tell you it's a black phone, but it's a white phone." I mean, this is what's going on. You know,
yeah,
we're being told that you can't trust yourself. So who can you trust?
yeah,
Tell the person who's telling you can't trust yourself, trust them.
yes,
And that person is not trustworthy
yeah,
and does not demonstrate in any way, shape, or form any of the human attributes that say we can make this country better, or we could make the
yeah,
world better, or we could make your neighborhood better, or your life could be improved. It's all hate, it's all harm, it's all grift, it's all, hey, I got a new Bible for you. It's signed, it's only $195,000, but it's my Bible made in Japan or China or something. I mean, none of it,
yeah,
it's like, and what's so sad, Richard, I mean, the thing that bothered me is like my friends who go, like somebody like, well, tell me what's wrong with Trump. I go, I don't shouldn't be have to tell you what's wrong with Trump. Just take a look at him.
yeah,
Don't trust me to tell you what's wrong.
yeah,
Look at what's going on in the world and what it tells you. Here's the thing that's you know this maybe better than anyone. What it tells you is what's important to the person.
yeah,
What's important to the person is not their neighbor or not their own stuff. it's these ideas of, you know, the race baiting ideas, the gender baiting ideas, the trans stuff, the hatred stuff, the border stuff.
yeah,
I posted something the other day, and you watch these people go crazy. I go, the enemy's not outside our borders trying to get in the United States. The enemy is inside our borders trying to get everything else to be part of us.
yeah, yeah,
You know, it's there's a world domination scheme somewhere in there.
yes,
It's no
yeah,
different than Putin. I mean, my guess is it's absolutely
yeah,
no different than Putin.
yeah.
Why do you talk about Greenland and Canada and all these different countries that
Well, we'll finish up, but I just want to say thank you again because you give me hope for the future in the United States. You know, I mean that's really important. It's really important to have a connection and to keep up these connections between people in the United States and people outside, I think.
what I would like to do if we do, I'd love to do more of these with you because yeah, I think we do need to be hopeful in the face of it. You know,
Yeah.
we have to. One of my favorite characters is Edward C. Barnes in the Think and Grow Rich books and the
Yep.
Law of Success by Napoleon Hill. You know, because it said that he wanted to be Edison's partner so bad that even without any money, he jumped a freight train and made his way to Orange, New Jersey to put Edison on notice that he would be his partner. And he gets there and he gets an interview with Edison. He says all this stuff, and Edison says, "Okay, you can be a janitor," and not anywhere near being a partner, but he took the janitorial position. And depending on which version of the book, some say months later, many months later, and others say 5 years later. They go, after 5 years of no evidence that he would ever be Edison's partner, he kept that dream alive within him,
Yep.
so that when an opportunity presented itself, he jumped it, and then the rest became history. He did become Edison's partner, selling a dictograph that nobody else could sell, and he did well. But here's the thing: it meant that while he was a janitor,
Yep.
it didn't bother him being the janitor. He wasn't
Yeah.
going, "I'm just a little janitor."
Yeah.
You know, he was like, I'm getting closer all the time," kind of thing. He kept that alive. He ignored the circumstances,
Yep. Yep.
but it didn't mean that he was mindless. It didn't mean
Yes.
that, he didn't pick something up because or he didn't clean something because he did. He acted as a janitor,
Yep.
but he didn't let the circumstances take the wind out of his sails.
That's it. That's it.
He didn't despair as a result of it. It intensified his wanting.
Yes.
So where we are right now in this country is hopefully what happens is people have a burning desire to help all people in this country get ahead and get further and to be a peaceful power and peaceful transfer of power when it comes to that. And that we spread peace throughout the world and we get along with our allies and our neighbors and our friends and we uplift and we cooperate and collaborate instead of this, I'm going to pound you into submission and I'm going to beat you and and you're going to become part of me kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's hope that more and more people will wake up and go, you know what, I'm not, I didn't sign on for this. but
Yeah.
there's got to be a better way, and that they choose a better way. It's always going to be this one or that one, this one or that one. You got to choose, and so hopefully we make the wise choice and the better choice, and a well-informed choice because but I want to,
Thank
the next time we do this, I really want to hear too from you more of your perspective because it's important. And maybe we get somebody from Germany and France and Greenland, and
Yeah.
and have different people speaking about what's going on and what they see in the press. Because as Americans, we're pretty isolated unless we go out of our way to watch BBC News or some other, we just take our whatever from Facebook. I mean, we're not really well informed here. Maybe I speak for myself, but so it would be good to have, a more global, view and perspective of what's happening, and
Well,
not just one.
yeah. Well, thank you. That's a lovely summary that you just made as well, and yeah, and nice metaphor as well. So thank you so much for this
You.
talk, and I hope we can share it with people, and it inspires this kind of communication between people inside and outside of what's happening, and also, of course, um, to hold this precious flame that you're describing and nurture it inside ourselves in challenging times. Yeah,
Well, you help people transform their lives, and this is what I do. And the idea is we want people to have a better life than they could have
yeah,
otherwise.
yeah,
So we're willing to help as best we can in order to make that happen for people. And I would like to think that that was the purpose of government too,
yeah,
and every government around the world, that it helps people have better lives than they otherwise could, and that we embrace those practices and principles, those methods, and resources that would allow everybody to do that instead of depriving some people while, elevating other people, that we become more egalitarian and spread the good instead of hoarding it.
yeah. That's exactly. Thank you, Rex. That is wonderful.